From a Cannes Award created specifically for one actor to a soundtrack released before the film even premiered, Spike Lee's provocative 1991 drama harbors secrets that make its controversial subject matter seem tame, including the chilling real-life murder that inspired it, and the future Hollywood stars making their debuts in crack-den scenes. Fact 1. Cannes revived a discontinued award just for Samuel L. Jackson. Samuel L. Jackson's performance in Jungle Fever was so powerful that the Cannes Film Festival did something it hadn't done in a decade and hasn't done since. The festival brought back its Best Supporting Performance Award, specifically to honor Jackson's portrayal of Gator Purify, a crack-addicted older brother who steals from his own family to feed his habit. This award had been given out only 3 times in the festival's history, between 1979 and 1981, to actors like Jack Thompson and Ian Holm. After Holm won for Chariots of Fire in 1981, the award was discontinued and seemed gone for good. But when the Cannes jury watched Jackson's electrifying performance in 1991, they felt compelled to resurrect the honor. That year, the Best Actor award went to John Turturro for his lead role in Barton Fink, but the jury apparently believed Jackson's work deserved recognition on the same level. Creating a special category just for one actor is virtually unheard of at major film festivals, making this one of the rarest achievements in cinema award history. What makes this even more remarkable is that Jackson had just completed drug rehabilitation 2 weeks before filming began. His raw, devastating portrayal of a man in the grip of addiction came from a deeply personal place, and the Cannes jury recognized something extraordinary in his performance. The festival has not awarded a Best Supporting Performance honor to anyone since Jackson, cementing his 1991 win as a singular moment. While Jackson would go on to receive an Oscar nomination for Pulp Fiction 3 years later, his Cannes Award for Jungle Fever remains one of the most unique accolades any actor has ever received. Fact 2. Samuel L. Jackson's ravaged look wasn't makeup. When audiences watched Samuel L. Jackson's disturbing portrayal of Gator Purify in Jungle Fever, many assumed his gaunt face and haunted eyes were the work of skilled makeup artists. The truth is far more personal and unsettling. Jackson had completed drug rehabilitation just 2 weeks before production began, and the ravaged appearance that made his performance so convincing was actually the result of his own detoxification process. In interviews, Jackson confirmed that what viewers saw on screen wasn't Hollywood artifice, but the real physical toll of his recent recovery from addiction. Jackson's struggles with substance abuse had reached a crisis point before Jungle Fever. His wife and 8-year-old daughter found him passed out on the floor. One morning, surrounded by drug paraphernalia, which finally pushed him to seek help. He checked into a rehab facility in New York, and almost immediately after his release, Spike Lee cast him in the role of Gator. Jackson's doctors and caseworkers actually warned him against taking a part that would surround him with triggers so soon after getting clean, but he threw himself into the performance anyway. The timing meant that Jackson's body was still recovering from years of drug abuse when cameras started rolling. His thin frame, hollow cheeks, and the exhausted look in his eyes were genuine physical manifestations of withdrawal and early sobriety. Jackson later described the experience as a form of acting therapy, channeling his recent trauma into the character. This raw authenticity is exactly what the Cannes Film Festival jury recognized when they honored his performance. And it's why Gator Purify remains one of the most realistic portrayals of addiction ever captured on film. Fact 3. The film marks 2 major film debuts. Jungle Fever served as the launching pad for 2 women who would become major Hollywood stars, both making their feature film debuts in Spike Lee's drama. Halle Berry appeared as Vivian, a crack addict in the film's most harrowing sequence, set inside a nightmarish crack house called the Taj Mahal. Queen Latifah, who was already gaining recognition as a groundbreaking rapper, played a waitress named LaShawn in a memorable restaurant scene. Neither role was particularly large, but both actresses used these small parts as springboards to legendary careers. Barry's debut was particularly striking because she reportedly refused to bathe for several days before filming her crack house scenes to fully embody the character's desperate circumstances. This dedication to authenticity, even in her first film role, signaled the intensity she would bring to her craft throughout her career. Just 1 year later, she would star opposite Eddie Murphy in Boomerang, and by 2002, she became the first African-American woman to win the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Monsters Ball. Queen Latifah was already making waves in the music industry when she took on her small role in Jungle Fever. In 1989, her album All Hail the Queen had established her as a pioneering voice in hip-hop, and Spike Lee gave her the opportunity to expand into acting. After several television appearances, she landed the starring role in the sitcom Living Single in 1993. Her commanding screen presence would eventually earn her an Academy Award nomination for Chicago and make her one of the most versatile entertainers in Hollywood. Fact 4. The soundtrack came out before the movie. In an unusual move for a film soundtrack, Stevie Wonder's complete 11-track album for Jungle Fever was released by Motown Records on May 28, 1991, nearly 2 weeks before the movie hit theaters on June 7th. This meant that fans could purchase and listen to Wonder's entire musical interpretation of Spike Lee's film before they ever saw a single frame of the actual movie. The reverse release strategy was rare then and remains uncommon today, as soundtracks typically arrive in stores alongside or after their films to capitalize on the theatrical buzz. Spike Lee had specifically asked Stevie Wonder to create what would essentially become his next full album, and Wonder agreed after reading the screenplay in Braille. Throughout production, Lee would send Wonder scenes from the film, and Wonder would compose custom songs tailored to specific moments in the story. Every song Wonder wrote ended up being used in the final cut, with nothing left on the cutting room floor. Wonder told Lee exactly where he thought each song should go in the film, though he gave the director freedom to rearrange them if needed. The album featured Wonder playing nearly every instrument himself, including lead vocals, piano, drums, percussion, synthesizer bass, harmonica, and various other instruments across all tracks. Critics had mixed reactions to the soundtrack, with some finding it lightweight while others considered it Wonder's best work in years. The album reached #1 on the Billboard R&B Albums chart and was certified gold by July 10, 1991, just 1 month after the film's release. Fact 5. Spike Lee wrote his screenplay using index cards. Spike Lee didn't sit down at a typewriter and write Jungle Fever from beginning to end in the traditional way. Instead, he used a unique organizational method that involved physically moving ideas around on index cards before writing any actual dialogue. A few months after the murder of Yusuf Hawkins in August 1989, Lee began jotting down thoughts, character names, plot points, and scene ideas in a notebook. Once he felt he had captured enough material, he transferred all of these notes onto 5x7-inch index cards, with each card representing a different scene or story element. Lee would then spread the cards out and begin the process of arranging them into groups, organizing them from the first scene to the last. This tactile approach allowed him to shuffle the cards around repeatedly, experimenting with different narrative structures until he found the right flow for the film's multiple interconnected storylines. The movie features several complex plot threads, including the main interracial romance, the crack addiction subplot involving Gator, and the parallel story of Paulie's relationship in Bensonhurst. Using index cards made it easier for Lee to see how these different narratives could weave together effectively. Lee later explained that this method makes the actual writing much easier, because by the time he sits down to write the screenplay, he already has a reservoir of material to draw from. He's already written bits of dialogue on the cards and outlined the scenes, so putting it all together becomes a matter of expansion rather than creation from scratch. This organizational technique has become a signature part of Lee's creative process, allowing him to handle ambitious multi-plot films with confidence. Fact 6. The iconic women's scene was almost entirely improvised. One of the most powerful and memorable scenes in Jungle Fever features a group of black women sitting around a table discussing race, colorism, and relationships after learning about Flipper's affair with a white woman. What many viewers don't realize is that this emotionally charged conversation was almost entirely improvised by the actresses over a period of 2 days. Spike Lee brought the women together and asked them to contribute their own deepest personal feelings and real-life experiences about black men, interracial relationships, and the painful subject of skin tone preferences within their own community. The scene features Drew, played by Lynette McKee, along with several of her friends who gather to support her through the betrayal. Rather than sticking to scripted dialogue, Lee encouraged the actresses to speak from the heart, drawing on their actual experiences and opinions. The result was a raw, genuine conversation that ranged from sorrow and anger to bitter humor, touching on uncomfortable truths that both black and white audiences needed to hear. The intensity and authenticity of the discussion made it clear these weren't just lines being recited, but real perspectives being shared. Creating this level of emotional honesty required significant preparation. The scene needed 3 full days of rehearsal before Lee felt ready to capture it on film, and the actual filming took an entire day to complete. Roger Ebert later praised this sequence as one of the most powerful moments in the entire movie, and critics across the board recognized it as a standout scene. The improvised nature of the dialogue gave it an electricity and unpredictability that scripted conversation simply couldn't match. Fact 7. One villain was based on a real murderer. While developing the characters for Jungle Fever, Spike Lee drew direct inspiration from the real-life murder that motivated him to make the film in the first place. The character Vinny, who appears as Paulie's aggressive and intimidating friend in the Bensonhurst scenes, was specifically crafted with Joseph Fama in mind. Fama was the teenager who pulled the trigger and shot 16-year-old Yusuf Hawkins to death on August 23, 1989, in what became one of the most notorious racially motivated murders in New York City history. Yusuf Hawkins had simply gone to Bensonhurst to look at a used car for sale when he was attacked by a mob of white youths armed with baseball bats. The group had been waiting to assault black teenagers they believed were coming to the neighborhood to attend a party with a local white girl. Hawkins had nothing to do with any party, but he was beaten and then shot twice in the chest by Fama. The senseless killing sparked massive protests and brought racial tensions in New York to a boiling point. Lee was deeply affected by Hawkins' murder and began working on Jungle Fever just months after the tragedy occurred. By modeling Vinny after Fama, Lee ensured that the aggressive, racist attitudes displayed by the Bensonhurst characters in the film weren't just fictional creations, but reflected the real hatred that had led to an innocent teenager's death. The film opens with a dedication to Yusuf Hawkins, and this character connection serves as a haunting reminder throughout the movie of the violence that inspired Lee to tell this story. Fact 8. The main character was modeled after the cinematographer Wesley Snipes plays Flipper Purify, a successful architect working at a prestigious Manhattan firm. But the character's professional background didn't come from Spike Lee's imagination alone. Lee actually based certain aspects of Flipper on Ernest Dickerson, the cinematographer who shot Jungle Fever and had been Lee's longtime friend and collaborator since their film school days. Dickerson had originally studied architecture at Howard University before switching his focus to cinematography, and Lee borrowed from his friend's educational background and experiences when developing the main character. This wasn't the first time Lee and Dickerson had worked together. Dickerson served as the director of photography on Lee's earliest films, including She's Gotta Have It, School Days, Do the Right Thing, and Mo Better Blues. The two men knew each other well enough that Lee could draw on personal details from Dickerson's life to create a more authentic and nuanced character. By grounding Flipper's profession in his cinematographer's real educational history, Lee added a layer of authenticity to the character that went beyond simple research. The decision to make Flipper an architect also served the film's themes perfectly. Architecture is a field that requires both creativity and technical precision, and it positioned Flipper as an educated, successful black professional navigating predominantly white corporate spaces. This occupational choice allowed Lee to explore issues of class and professional ambition alongside the film's central focus on race and relationships. Dickerson's actual journey through architecture school gave Lee insider knowledge about the profession that helped make Flipper's work life feel genuine and detailed rather than superficial. Fact 9. The crew faced violence. While filming in Bensonhurst, Spike Lee was determined to film Jungle Fever in the actual Bensonhurst neighborhood where Yusuf Hawkins had been murdered less than 2 years earlier, despite warnings that the predominantly Italian-American community might not welcome a film crew addressing the tragedy. Lee's instincts proved correct as the production faced intense hostility from the moment they arrived. The crew received bomb threats, dealt with constant disruptions from angry residents, and eventually experienced actual physical violence that put cast and crew members in danger. Bensonhurst in 1990 was still raw from the Hawkins murder and the protests that followed. Many residents felt unfairly portrayed as racists and resented Lee bringing cameras to their neighborhood to make a film about interracial relationships. The tension escalated beyond verbal confrontations when someone from the neighborhood threw a rock that struck cinematographer Ernest Dickerson. This wasn't just harassment or intimidation, it was a direct physical assault on a crew member simply trying to do his job. Despite the hostile environment, Lee refused to relocate the production or tone down his vision for the film. The scenes shot in Bensonhurst were crucial to the story, as they depicted Angie's Italian-American family and the racist attitudes prevalent in her community. Filming in the real location rather than recreating it elsewhere gave the movie an authenticity that Lee felt was essential. The violence and threats the crew endured became part of the film's legacy, demonstrating that the racial tensions Lee was depicting on screen were very much alive in real life during production. Fact 10. The film's main theme was recycled from another movie. The haunting instrumental theme that plays throughout Jungle Fever wasn't actually composed for the film at all. Terence Blanchard had originally written the piece called Sing Soweto for Spike Lee's previous movie, Mo Better Blues, which came out in 1990. When it came time to score Jungle Fever, Blanchard sat down to create fresh musical themes for the new film, but Lee had become so attached to Sing Soweto that he couldn't get it out of his head and insisted on using it again. Blanchard kept trying to write different themes that would be original to Jungle Fever, presenting Lee with new compositions that would give the film its own distinct musical identity. But every time, Lee would dismiss the new material and tell Blanchard that he wanted to use Sing Soweto instead. Lee even reassured Blanchard by saying that nobody would notice the music had been used in a previous film. Blanchard protested, pointing out that the theme had literally just appeared in Mo Better Blues, but Lee remained firm in his decision. The director loved the piece so much that he felt it was perfect for Jungle Fever, regardless of where it had been used before. Interestingly, Sing Soweto doesn't appear on the official soundtrack album for either film, even though it's used prominently in both movies. The Jungle Fever soundtrack consists entirely of songs by Stevie Wonder, while the Mo Better Blues soundtrack features jazz performances. This means that one of the most recognizable musical elements in Jungle Fever exists only in the film itself, making Lee's attachment to the piece even more significant to the movie's emotional impact. Fact 11. Universal Pictures made Lee cut a controversial prologue. Spike Lee originally shot an opening prologue for Jungle Fever that would have set the stage for the film's exploration of racial tensions, but the sequence never made it to theaters. Universal Pictures, the studio distributing the $12.5 million production, grew uncomfortable with the content of the opening scene and encouraged Lee to remove what they considered an offending sequence. Lee ultimately agreed to cut the prologue, and the film now opens with the dedication to Yusuf Hawkins, followed immediately by the playful opening credits set to Stevie Wonder's title song. The exact content of the deleted prologue has never been fully disclosed, and Universal has never released the footage to the public. This means that audiences have only ever seen the version of Jungle Fever that begins with its current opening, and whatever Lee originally intended as the film's introduction remains locked away in a vault somewhere. The decision to cut the prologue represents one of the few times Lee compromised his vision based on studio pressure, as he was known throughout his career for maintaining creative control over his projects. What makes this particularly interesting is that Jungle Fever, even without the controversial opening, still sparked significant debate when it was released. The film's frank discussions of interracial relationships and racial prejudice generated a full page of letters in the Los Angeles Times and prompted heated conversations across the country. If the theatrical version was already provocative enough to create that level of controversy, it raises questions about just how much more direct and confrontational the original prologue must have been to make a major studio demand its removal. Fact 12, a full page of letters was published about the film Jungle Fever sparked such intense public debate that the Los Angeles Times devoted an entire page to reader responses on July 7, 1991, exactly 1 month after the film's release. The newspaper had previously published an article by African-American writer Idabari Njeri, who worked as a reporter for the Times, in which she criticized Spike Lee's film for perpetuating harmful myths and stereotypes about interracial relationships. Her critique touched a nerve with readers on all sides of the issue, prompting such a flood of letters that the newspaper decided to dedicate a full page to printing them. And Njeri's main argument was that Jungle Fever reinforced, rather than challenged, problematic ideas about why black and white people enter into romantic relationships with each other. She felt the film suggested these relationships were based more on racial stereotypes and curiosity than genuine love and connection. This criticism sparked passionate responses from readers who either agreed with her assessment or felt she had missed the point of Lee's intentionally provocative exploration of the topic. The controversy surrounding the film extended beyond just this one newspaper. Throughout the summer of 1991, Jungle Fever became a cultural flashpoint that forced Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about race, attraction, and prejudice. Film critics recognized Lee as a provocateur who deliberately pushed buttons and started conversations, even when those conversations became heated. The fact that a major newspaper felt compelled to publish an entire page of letters about a single film demonstrates just how deeply Jungle Fever affected audiences and how urgently people felt the need to weigh in on the issues it raised. Fact 13. Future Sopranos stars appear in early roles. Years before Michael Imperioli became famous as Christopher Moltisanti on The Sopranos, he appeared in Jungle Fever as James Tucci, one of Angie's aggressive brothers in the Bensonhurst scenes. This was one of Imperioli's earliest film roles, coming just 1 year after he played Spider, the young man who gets shot in the foot in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. Also appearing in the film was Nicholas Turturro, who played Vinny, one of the intimidating neighborhood guys who hangs around Paulie's store. While Turturro and Imperioli share screen time in Jungle Fever, they're not actually related, though both actors would go on to become recognizable faces in crime dramas and New York-based films. Imperioli's appearance in Jungle Fever came during the early phase of his career when he was building a reputation playing tough Italian-American characters in independent films. Working with Spike Lee gave him exposure to a different kind of filmmaking than the Scorsese gangster world he had just entered with Goodfellas. In Jungle Fever, Imperioli's character represents the racist attitudes prevalent in Bensonhurst, threatening Angie and expressing hostility toward any black people who dare enter the neighborhood. Both actors would continue working steadily throughout the 1990s before finding their most iconic roles. Imperioli eventually won an Emmy Award in 2004 for his performance on The Sopranos, while Turturro built a successful career in both television and film. Looking back at Jungle Fever now, it's fascinating to see these future television stars in such early supporting roles, playing the kind of street-level Italian-American characters that would become their specialty throughout their careers. Fact 14. The film is dedicated to a murder victim. Before the opening credits even begin, Jungle Fever displays a simple dedication card that reads, "In memory of Yusuf K. Hawkins, March 19, 1973 to August 23, 1989. This brief message honors a 16-year-old black teenager whose senseless murder directly inspired Spike Lee to make the film." Yusuf Hawkins went to the Bensonhurst neighborhood of Brooklyn on that August evening in 1989 for an innocent reason. He wanted to look at a used Pontiac that was for sale and thought he might be able to buy it. What Hawkins didn't know was that a group of white teenagers had gathered in the area, armed with baseball bats and at least one gun, waiting to attack any black youths who might show up. They believed that black teenagers were coming to the neighborhood to attend a party thrown by a local white girl, and they intended to violently defend what they saw as their territory. When Hawkins and his friends arrived, the mob attacked them immediately. Hawkins was beaten with bats and then shot twice in the chest, dying from his wounds. The tragedy became a national flashpoint for discussions about race and violence in America. Hawkins had absolutely nothing to do with any party and was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, but that didn't matter to his attackers. By dedicating Jungle Fever to Hawkins, Lee ensured that every viewer would understand the real-world violence and hatred that motivated the film's story. The dedication transforms the movie from a fictional drama into something more urgent and necessary. Fact 15. Stevie Wonder rereads scripts in Braille. When Spike Lee approached Stevie Wonder about creating the soundtrack for Jungle Fever, he made an ambitious request. He wanted Wonder's next album to essentially be the film's score. Wonder agreed to consider the project, but first he told Lee that he needed to read the script. Despite being blind since shortly after birth, Wonder insisted on reading the screenplay himself rather than having someone describe it to him. Lee arranged to have the entire script translated into Braille, and Wonder read through it page by page using his fingers. After reading the screenplay, Wonder committed to the project and told Lee he would write original songs, custom-crafted for specific moments in the movie. Throughout production, Lee would send Wonder individual scenes as they were being filmed, and Wonder would compose music that matched the emotional tone and narrative purpose of each sequence. Lee later recalled that Wonder would tell him exactly where he thought each song should go in the film, though he gave Lee permission to move things around if needed for creative reasons. Wonder's dedication to understanding the visual medium, despite his blindness, extends beyond just this one project. He's known to attend movie screenings regularly, bringing an assistant who whispers descriptions of what's happening on screen so he can follow the story and imagery. This practice gives him insight into how music functions in film and allows him to create scores that enhance the visual storytelling. For Jungle Fever, this approach resulted in 11 original songs that Lee used throughout the movie, with nothing left unused on the cutting room floor.